Amid the Philadelphia 76ers' disastrous start to the season, Daryl Morey has made his first move to tweak this roster, signing Pete Nance to a two-way contract in a move that also released Lester Quinones. Pete Nance is the brother of Larry Nance Jr., the son of Larry Nance Sr., both of which played in the NBA. Larry Nance, a current active player for the Cleveland Cavaliers now, and a clear shakeup that the Sixers are indicating a little bit of their current roster situation. So to dive right into what is going down with the Sixers franchise, do want to start off with this report from Tim Bontemps announcing things that the Philadelphia 76ers are signing Pete Nance to a two-way contract. Mark Bartelstein of Priority Sports confirms to ESPN. Nance, the younger brother of Hawks big man Larry Nance, has been playing for the G League for the Cleveland Charge in the G League. Now, to correspond with this move, we also got the news that sources, Philadelphia 76ers will waive Lester Quinones. The 24-year-old is a career 36% three-point shooter who's expected to have suitors on the market. Quinones is being waived so the Sixers can sign Pete Nance to a two-way deal. Philly needs more front court depth with Andre Drummond out. And that, to me, is probably the biggest story of this situation, is it is a bit of an indication of what the expectation is as the big man role. Now, a little bit about Pete Nance as a whole, that I'll start by pulling up his college stats here, that he spent 4 years at Northwestern before transferring to North Carolina there. Spent one season at UNC in which he averaged 10 points per game, 6 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1.1 blocks. Won't lie, I did watch quite a bit of UNC basketball. He was never a guy that stood out as this guy's going to be amazing at the NBA level, or a guy that I truly evaluated as a high-level NBA talent. He is a kind of a unique skill set, really good connective passer, high IQ basketball player, pretty good shot blocker. He is 6'11", a real deal big man, but he didn't really play a traditional big man role for most of his time at UNC, far more at Northwestern than we saw a bit of that, but I would really classify him as a forward over a center. But the reality is these Sixers need big man bodies to talk about the current situation. Then we know Joel Embiid, who knows what is the situation with his overall knee, and also has been listed as out for personal reasons. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but what I will hint at, and you can read between the lines, is there may be another member of his family that is currently being delivered to the world here, that would be the personal reason why he is not around the team at this current point in time, and it might be a girl for what it's worth there. Now, as far as Andre Drummond, we did get a little bit of an update here, and to dive into what that says, let's start off from Keith Pompey saying that Sixers center Andre Drummond with a right ankle sprain is out for the team's next 3 games. He will be reevaluated this weekend. Now, Drummond spoke on it himself as well, and to dive into his quote, Sixers center Andre Drummond on how many weeks he expects to miss with his sprained right ankle. Weeks, ? Days. I recover fast, man. I'm staying on top of it, just doing what the doctors tell me to do, and when it's time for me to come back, I'll come back. My plan is to come back soon. Now, obviously, we saw Andre Drummond suffer his little ankle sprain here, and pulling up the video, this being in the previous game against the Detroit Pistons, happened just 3 minutes and 33 seconds into the game, so really unfortunate break for Andre, and kind of the story of the Sixers season is they are snake-bitten, that whenever things are starting to go right, they take another hit here. Now, I'm not as upset about this Andre Drummond injury as I think is the case with a lot of the more significant issues. You can see that ankle really snap there. Feel bad for the guy. Obviously, never want to wish injuries on anybody, but I do think in the grand scale for what we're talking about, this isn't something that's going to be a huge deal. He probably misses the next 3 games and then is right back to pick it up where he left off here. And for what it's worth, the Sixers are seeing some signs of progress with some of the other options at the big man role. I was impressed with what we saw from Adem Bona. Excited to see him in a larger sample size. I think KJ Martin has more than pulled his weight, playing a little bit of that small ball center. His athleticism and shot blocking prowess really shines on the Sixers team. I thought some of his rotations, his weak side blocks, were really impressive for this team and aided them in a major way. So I am excited to see more of that in the absence of Drummond and likely Embiid for however long that will be, but clear that Pete Nance is going to be a part of this equation here. Now, I do want to mention when kind of speaking about Nance, first let me pull up his G League stats as well. We mentioned his college. He's been better at the G League level than I expected, and particularly there are some areas of growth to make his game more NBA compatible here. So in 8 games this season, playing 34.5 minutes per game in the G there, averaging 18.3 points, 6.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 blocks per game. He's also really increased his three-point volume, shooting 6.3 long-range attempts per game this season, connecting at a 32% rate, so not an elite shooter by any definition of it, but that is enough to be competent, respectable, and something that does change the way the teams have to guard you. So I do give him a little bit of credit and respect for really adapting his game to be prepared for this NBA leap. Now we're going to get a chance to see it on full display. He really has not been granted his NBA opportunity yet, has played just 27 minutes at the NBA level thus far in his career, only in his second season out of college there. He's 23 years old. This is a guy that could bring something. We will see how it looks. I do think it's pretty likely that we see somewhat of an opportunity of him. I do think Nick Nurse prefers to keep a little bit more of a traditional big man, and I think it's better to have the Yabusele in stretches or KJ Martin in stretches. I think Yabu will have the longest leash out of any of these guys that we're speaking about as far as the big man opportunity. But Nurse has been pretty open in his recent press conferences, speaking about his desire or his preference that they've just been outsizing teams. Before Drummond got hurt, that the starting lineup for that game was with both Drummond and Yabusele on the floor. That is not the first time we see that. When you flash back to the game before when Paul George returned, that we're talking about Paul George, Andre Drummond and Yabusele all on the floor. That's probably the biggest size advantage that we've seen from a Sixers team all season. So it would not surprise me if he wants to continue leaning in that direction. That's why you bring in a player like Pete Nance, and we'll see how much of an opportunity that we do get for him to see. Now, I am a little bit disappointed in the loss of Lester Quinones, to be straightforward about this. I do have higher expectations for him as an NBA talent than I feel about Nance. I'm a little more passionate that this guy belongs in the league or has an opportunity ahead of him. He's certainly showed more at the NBA level to this point, particularly during his time with the Warriors. Saw far more extensive minutes than anything that we've seen from Nance. He is a 36% three-point shooter. There is a little scrap to him, a little bit of, personality or tough an edge that he has when he plays the game of basketball, which I really like. Would not shock me if he is able to latch on to the bottom part of a roster on one of the more rebuilding teams. I think it's more likely that he does get another two-way contract somewhere. But my point being here, I guess the best case scenario for the Sixers would that he is able to return and just be a full-time player for this Blue Coats team. I do think he's a caliber of talent worthy of at least keeping an eye on moving forward. So hopefully doesn't get too far, but wishing Lester the best there. And obviously, when you make this decision, you can only have the 3 two-way slots there. That it came down to Quinones, Justin Edwards, and Jeff Dowtin here. So what does that say about the Sixers team? Is they clearly are prioritizing those other two. I understand the concept of getting a big man in the mix, just so you can kind of even that out. Jeff Dowtin, very clearly like a point guard caliber of player. He is a guy that is ball dominant, needs it in his hands, and is a guy that Nick Nurse trusts. To be perfectly honest, they're using that two-way slot in a slightly different way than you typically see. That more or less the two-way opportunities are developmental players that you're hoping can take that next step, go back and forth to G League, and they're really early on in their developmental arc. That's not quite Jeff Dowtin. This is a guy who he is at this point. He's been around. He just made the cut for qualifying for his two-way opportunity due to his age and the minutes that he has played. This will be his final season in which he is eligible for that. So it will be a make-or-break season for Jeff Dowtin. I like him. I think he's had solid moments. He's not going to do too much, not going to do too little. He's exactly who he is. I kind of give that a lot of credit compared to Ricky Council, obviously a more talented basketball player overall, but he's a guy that's more of a wild card. With Jeff Dowtin, you know exactly what you're getting, and I think that's a comforting feeling for Nick Nurse and the Sixers organization. Now, Justin Edwards, a little bit of the other side of the coin here is that is a 19-year-old guy who spent one and done season at Kentucky, was a top draft pick or a top prospect who did not play his way into a top draft pick, that he kind of was overlooked, overshadowed by the Reed Shepherds and Rob Dillinghams on that Kentucky roster. Happens every year down there in Kentucky. Well, no longer now that John Calipari stepping out there to Arkansas, but that is kind of his thought process. He brings in as many top recruits as he can possibly bring in, lets the cream rise to the top as those guys compete themselves out. So the Sixers still holding out hope that Edwards can find his way to that top prospect, and then he just was overshadowed by some other legitimate NBA talents there. I've seen his ups and downs, talked to him a couple times. Really nice kid, a guy that seems to understand the role that he's growing into as far as a defensive-minded approach to basketball, but he's still a ways to go in kind of his developmental arc. I don't have very high expectations that we see much Justin Edwards at the NBA level for this season. Well, maybe a different story moving forward, and I do think it's telling that the Sixers elected to keep him over Quinones here, but we'll see how that plays itself out. For now, welcome to Philadelphia, Pete Nance. We will see how much of an opportunity that he does get in the coming days. I think there's a really high chance that this is kind of a short-term situation and that he is released shortly after this when Andre Drummond gets healthy and Joel Embiid gets back. If that is the case, we'll see. He's not a bad guy to have in an organization, but I think whether or not he gets an opportunity in like these next 3 games without Drummond will pretty much tell if there's any sort of belief in him as a basketball player. And if that is not the case, this is just going to be kind of a fun trivia line for was Pete Nance on the Sixers ever? And I will be calling people liars who say that yes, because he's going to be a pretty forgettable name if that is the case there. But ultimately, we'll see what happens. The Sixers are back in action tonight on a 1-game winning streak. So 1-0. If you just take last game on pace for an 82-0 season, I'm going to start counting it that way to help my mentals a little bit here. We'll see how things shake out for this Sixers team, but need them to continue picking up as many wins as possible and starting to climb the standings. There's still a beacon of hope that this season could get back on the right track, but not a lot of margin for error at this point. So maybe Pete Nance is the spark that saved the Sixers season. I'm certainly not banking on that being the case there, but appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. What do you think of the move by the Sixers? Is this something that moves the meter for you at all? Do you not care that Pete Nance is remotely on this roster? Are you sad to see Lester Quinones go? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. Make sure you're dropping a like on this video and subscribing if you have not already. I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.